So I'm going to talk about NightwatchJS, and just a little sort of like intro on the slide. So I'm Ilesh Mistry, if you joined a bit late. CMS specialist and a content MVP. If you need to contact me, you can use the QR code on the right. So today with Nightwatch, what am I going to be covering? Well, I'm going to have a brief sort of intro slides on end-to-end testing and what it is. Then talk about NightwatchJS and how you can get started, and show you a few examples, and then hopefully there's a few takeaways that you can take away from this. Okay, so what is end-to-end testing or automated browser testing or whatever the names are out there for it? But basically, automated browsers, it's really trying to automate them to perform end-to-end functional testing on your website or application. So you don't want to be doing this manual stuff where you're looking on the screen. Like, manual's great as well, but when it's automated, at least it is handled elsewhere. And what it allows you to do is obviously test whether something is broken or not, test whether it's meant to be working as it's expected to be working. And this is where automated browser testing, end-to-end testing comes in. It can cover a broad range, like detecting something is missing on a checkout process, or filling in a login form and then finding actually, someone's added a new field in, or on a contact form. And you'll find, like, if something like that's broken, you want to be told about it, and actually some test, to be actually notified that, that's happened. So, there's obviously reasons on why we would use end-to-end testing, especially when it comes to like a client environment. Clients get they're not happy when, something that was working there, or something that's there, and there's bugs appearing all the time. It's very sort of like disappointing on yourself if you're working, and obviously on your company as well. Like, it's very bad sort of feedback and reputation that could be lost by just small bugs even coming through. So there's other reasons, like you could have like a bug that's been there but no one's noticed, and then it becomes into a bigger one, and then it obviously causes sites to crash, etc. There's other things where, like, you've got functionality there that was working perfectly for 3-4 months, and then suddenly something new comes in, but actually you don't know about the fact that it was actually related to something else and it's broke. So there's things like regression testing that could be really good in this scenario. A lot of things as well is, like, you could be actually wasting a lot of time manually testing things, and that can be sort of like resolved by these automated tests. And also, like, as much as you can try and pick up with your manual testing, there's certain things that you can't see or pick up yourselves. So this is where end-to-end testing and automated browser testing can really come in and help out. So one of them out there, there's lots out there, is called NightwatchJS. It's basically built with Node.js, or built on top of Node.js, and it's one of the popular Node.js end-to-end testing frameworks solutions. And what you can do with the actual Nightwatch itself is that utilize kind of similar to quite a lot of the end-to-end testing tools, is like you use CSS classes to kind of detect what to test, or XPath as well, which is another way of actually getting to a specific element on the page. And NightwatchJS uses the concept of like using like a WebDriver. So in this case, a W3C WebDriver API. And in the example that's shown here, it's like it's basically focused on Firefox. And it uses that to kind of allow you to then launch the browser up and start testing, and then obviously return the results. And with Nightwatch, I think it was released in 2014. And one of the things that they've just recently done is they've provided a big update, 1.50. I think it was like on the 20th of October. So that previous example was showing you like one example of a browser that you could use. And obviously it's highly recommended not to just test on one browser, otherwise you'll be in trouble. So it's really worth like looking at sort of like what Nightwatch offer here is a Selenium grid stroke cloud option. So it allows you to test multiple browsers with different web drivers to allow you to kind of make sure your coverage is actually covering everything that it should be covering in sense of your test. The other thing is as well is like it's very similar to things like, you know, you could utilize and, you know, incorporate in with Browser Stack, Source Labs, cross-browser testing and Lambda test as well. So there's ways to kind of bring everything together with Nightwatch, but then at least you're like serving all the different browsers and testing them. So how do you get started with Nightwatch? So as I mentioned before, like Node.js is like one of the big requirements. So that needs to be installed. And once you've done that, then you need to install Nightwatch. So there's a command here is npm install Nightwatch. And then once you've done that, then you need to kind of think about what WebDriver APIs and sockets you want to use. So basically, you know, you can choose about a couple of browsers or you can go for them all. So each of them need to be kind of installed. So in this case, the example is the Gecko driver for Firefox and then the Chrome driver for Chrome. But there's other, like you can obviously start looking at other browsers as much as you want and then add in the web drivers accordingly. One of the big things obviously you need to kind of utilize in here as well is that you need to install Selenium Server via the Java side of things. This allows you to make sure that you actually are running across the multiple browsers. So if you want to do multiple browser testing, that's going to be quite important. And one of the key files that you're associated Nightwatch with is Nightwatch config.js. So on the right-hand side, you can see an example of this. So it's got areas, and if my mouse will come over. So you can specify source folders, so where you want your test to kind of be included. You can also say, okay, like whether you want the process to start. And the port is obviously important because that's what's going to trigger, in this case, Firefox and launch that up. And then here is some sort of like default testing that you can utilize. So you can basically set default, you know, values that then can be utilized later on in your tests. Along with like the bits I showed about getting started, there's key sort of elements that you've got to think about in the sense of like some, you know, key terminologies that you would use. So, or codes. So basically in this case, assertions are like really big. So that tells you if a test has passed or failed. And you need to know that. So, you know, you could write a lot of code to do lots of testing, but actually, you know, you need to know whether step 3 is actually failed or step 5 or something that you're trying to look for. So, you know, that's one of the big things. So there's things like wait for element visible, check if some title contains X, Y, and Z. The other options you have as well is like you tend to use quite a lot of is set value and URL. Set value allows you to do what is kind of said there, set value. So you can go in, say, into a contact form and add in a bit of text, but you need to select that particular field and then add in that bit of text into that field. So you can imagine it could be quite powerful if you're filling a form in and you're testing that via sort of like a, you know, automated test. Other things you can do as well, like is you need to obviously direct the users or direct your tests to a particular sort of browser URL. So you can use that as well. So the URL property is quite big. And then sometimes you might want to do something where you want to expect something to be there as a visibility element in there as well. The general structure of these tests, they look like this. So they'll have something like module.exports. And then within the curly braces, you tend to say, okay, what are you trying to do? And that bit of text that says something to tell you about the test is really just anything. You could put any set of characters in there. It's just more of an instruction or description of that test itself. And then you tend to use the function around it, and it could be a client or browser element. But once you've done that, then you can utilize all the commands that we've some of the commands I mentioned earlier, but all of the commands that you can utilize from the Nightwatch website. So here's an example of one where you've got an example here that you go to Google, search for Nightwatch. You can see here that it's also got an element here to allow you to store variables. So you don't have to kind of type in hashtag search and then the next div, etc., etc., etc. You don't need to do all of that. You can just do that once, and you may be utilizing that more in the project, in your tests. And then you've got like series of commands. So it's hopefully quite easy to read in a sense of a readable format, in the sense that your client, you're going to go to a URL, you're going to wait for that body to be available, and it tells you how long it's going to be there for. And then you say, okay, is something going to be visible? Yes or no. That's when you'll get a return back to say yes or no. And then you set the value, and then you click the button, and then there's pause elements as well. So you can go through all of that, and then you can understand that the test can get quite big, but the beauty of this is the fact that these codes are written in code. These tests are written in code. So, you've got the option of like really, putting things in source control, adjusting quite easily. There's no GUI, so you don't have to kind of drag and drop and think, oh no, I've missed a step, and then have to kind of redo the whole thing again. It's very sort of like easy to kind of add an extra step in or remove steps, etc. And then if you wanted to run it, then say in this example, it's NPX, and Nightwatch is just the things that you need to have in there. And then you specify, and this is how you run a manual test, but you will specify the path to that particular test. In this case, google.js is the test that we're looking for Nightwatch. And you can do things, so obviously like it's not just like one test at a time, so you can do test groups, suites, and you can basically say, okay, well, I want to run the whole test group of smoke tests in this example here. Then all you need to do is on the right hand side, you can see that it says -- group and then smoke tests. You might find that actually, you've got lots of tests, and then suddenly there's areas where you need to make sure that you want to exclude some things. So you can skip as well. So you can say, okay, I want to go through all of these, but then skip this particular one as well. So I'm just going to quickly do a quick sort of demo, show you some code, etc. So I can just bring up Visual Studio Code. Okay. So the nightwatch.config.js file it is pretty much the biggest one that you need to kind of concentrate on when you run Nightwatch. Generally, the folder structure can be as you wish. You can see here it's quite small. The key thing is that file. Potentially, there may be some logs due to the fact that you've done some testing and something's actually come out from them. And then you tend to have like folders that you can do things. So you can see here that I've got folders for screens. I've got folders for the test output, and I've got folders for the test itself. And then you can obviously go dig deeper down as well in those particular scenarios. The actual config file itself, you can get this is pretty much a standard what you get out the box. And you can see here, this is where we can look at the source folders of where the tests actually sit. There's also areas that you can add like paths to particular objects and commands and the sessions and custom ones. And then you've got things where you've got like test default settings. So basically this can be your test set, default area where you can say, okay, well, in this particular scenario, I've got screenshots and that's enabled to true. So if there is a failure, I can get a screenshot from that, and I can show you that in a bit as well. And then you've got areas where you can say, okay, what the default browser could be, and how you can set up other browsers. So for example, Safari in this case, Firefox, Chrome, etc. So you can imagine that this file could get, quite big, but then you've also got the elements that you can actually incorporate like browser stack information as well. So there's lots of things that you can actually utilize in this particular file. So let's show you like a quick search demo. So what you've got here is what I'm going to do is actually go to search client, wait for a little time, and then actually go and search for the Nightwatch website. And I'm going to say that I'm going to actually just enter the key, put the enter key in, and give like once I've got there, I basically want to check that, you know, I'm actually searching for what I'm searching on there, on the search results. So to do this, let me just quickly put this in, npx Nightwatch. And in this case, it would be in the search folder. And let's try and do search demo.js. And one of the things is that it's going to use a default browser. And what I sometimes think is like, do I want to use that? Do I want to try a different browser? And in this case, I'm going to change this one to say, okay, I'm going to try and use the Chrome browser instead. So it'll try and run through the test itself. It will run through everything it can to kind of get this ready and launched up. So it'll be a few seconds, and then, oh, have I got the wrong? Yep, that's fine. So live demos as they go. I didn't say I was in the test folder. So test folder, yep, search, cool. Hopefully that's it. So a few more seconds, sorry. And once, hopefully this will launch up. Cool, looks like it's doing something. And it's launching the browser. It's going to the search itself. It's a bit fast there, but it's going to search for NightwatchJS, which is done. And it's now going to go to the website. And that's what we want it to do. So imagine that you can, you know, create these tests. And what happens to these tests is that you can, this is a very simple example, but this is going through and say, okay, I'm going to go and add in the word NightwatchJS into my search, pause for a little while. And once I'm there, the results, when I get that results, I'm going to check if it's got, and this is just an area that's it's looking for. So it's just it could be a div tag, it could be a class name, it could be, and in this case, it's just an element it's looking for. You'll have to look through and, you know, find that element within the results. But then it's saying if once it's got that, assert it out. So in this case, what you'll find is that you will see that that assertion has passed here, and how long it took. Once it's done that, then it's going to click on the results itself and then go to the NightwatchJS page. What you'll also notice here is that I've actually split this down to illustrate that you can break things down into two different tests or groups. And you can see here that basically this one has passed, and now it's looking to pass too. So if, for example, you had like lots and lots of you know, elements in there that you're testing and doing lots of things with, imagine that it was just in that one whole group. It would be very hard to kind of pinpoint what you're looking at, although it will, you know, say what's failed. So splitting it down is obviously going to make it easier and easy to manage, basically. So that's like showing you a very quick test that's been set up. Then what you have to kind of think about is like, you know, what happens if something fails, right? So let's have a look at a failure. So doing the same sort of search, and in this case, we're going to Google, so it'll be different. But once we've done that, then what we want to do is say, okay, that should fail because it can't find that bit of text. So, you know, what should happen is that you should get a warning here, but I want to also see, hopefully, is an image kind of captured in the screenshots area. So let's do that. So search demo failure. Okay, so it's just running through the test. So it's going to try and go to Google, try and add this in. Just agree that, but basically that's what it's done. It's trying to find this, and then it should hopefully close the browser itself. Cool. Okay, so you can see here that you know, there is some more information here. So let's go back to, here we go. So that's where it started to run the test. It gives you some information of where it is and what browser it used. Told you like, you know, part 1 passed, so that was cool. Part 2, basically it was looking for this text. It was trying to find that, but it didn't get that, is what it's saying. And basically, for part of that, what will happen is that you've got a failure. And that failure would then hopefully indicate that we've got, and also you get the results, sorry, so you get the results here to say what's failed and what's passed. But hopefully, if I go and bring up another screen, just 2 seconds. So within my Nightwatch area, I've got the screen section and search term failure. I just launch that up and bring that across, sorry. So what this does is that it tells you that this screen is where it failed at. And you can imagine that that can be really powerful in a sense that you've got loads of areas that you're putting tests on. Then you find that there's a failure somewhere. And obviously you can add in some notifications to kind of trigger to tell you that a test has failed. But knowing exactly where that test has failed is going to be valuable as well, visually as well. So, you know, I feel that screenshots part of it is like really powerful feature, part of Nightwatch. Okay. The final bit of the demo would be, you know, like to show you that you can also do things where you've got a form set up. So in this case, I'm looking at a website which is called Kentico Content, which is a CMS, headless CMS that I work with quite a lot. The idea is to go to the sign up form, you know, find the particular join area to make sure that exists, add in your email address and password. Don't get, you know, this is more like logging. This is not logging in, this is joining, so it won't work. But you know, that's the kind of concept here, that you can go ahead and start testing forms. And let's see if this runs. If not, we'll come out of there. So this is an empty meetup. Content.js. Okay, so it's gone to the website. And it's failed, and I think it's failed because the fact that it took a while to get to that page. And I should have put maybe some more extra sort of like pauses in between. But you can see here that that's actually, you know, another failure where you need to kind of control how, and sometimes it's hard to know how quick a browser could launch a particular website. So, you know, knowing that, you know, you've got that sort of ability where you may need to kind of just adjust these values a bit more, makes it quite easy to kind of be done in sort of like a JavaScript file in this case. So, and I can just bring that across to say that that's a failure there. Bring that image across. And at what point it fails. So to me, it would be like, oh, okay, so, you know, the text didn't even get the opportunity to fill in into that field. So I need to have a look at why that happened. So hopefully you can see that the screenshot side of thing is really powerful. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so I found like, especially with my sort of experience with NightwatchJS, that there were some gotchas, things to kind of be aware of, and you need to consider, and especially like sometimes it's a bit more trickier if you're working on a non sort of personal machine. So, things like full permissions need to be there because you can't write to that particular area, and you can't like install the right things that you want to be installing. So just bear that in mind, and make sure you're obviously running in administration mode. Also, with the updates from Nightwatch quite recently as well, is to really make sure you can kind of running up to date versions of Node, or use Node version manager to kind of make sure that you're using the right one for the right sort of solution. And obviously, if you need any help, then the website's really good to follow. They've got good step-by-step guides to allow you to kind of install it and work with it, and lots of API tips, and there's a good community out there as well. So what we found, like when running Nightwatch, is the fact that here are a couple of stats from a project, and what we found is like it actually saved time, from like bug fixing. So there was like 60 to 70% potential time that we saved. From that particular project, we found like we had like 33 test suites, and 150 of those, 7 of those tests actually used. So there's quite a lot of tests going on, and doing this kind of automated browser testing means that your developers and your team are more productive doing other things. They're not worrying about too much about, okay, like do I need to test this? Do I need to test that? They'll know once the tests have failed. And even better is like if you've got a test automation engineer in your team, that's ideally they'll be picking this up straight away. Oh, there's something that's changed. Or if you're working in Agile, if you've got a story and a new story coming up that knows that there's going to be some dependencies, you can kind of add a test automation engineer into that mix, and they'll basically pick that up and say, okay, well, you might need to add a test for this as well. Also, we found obviously, kind of what we needed to be doing as well is like any new bugs that we found, a new test was created for it. It kind of just made sense. So that was one of them. And then previous bugs were caught, and obviously they didn't make it to production, which is really good. And we found like a quite good sort of selection of information from running this on projects. A couple of takeaways that you can take away from here is obviously NightwatchJS is free, which is really handy because it's a good solution that you can use with Node. It's easy to set up. I found it was really easy to set up. It saves a lot of time rather than you having to test other things manually. Obviously, a bonus is obviously it's for JavaScript developers, but any test automation engineers or with someone with JavaScript knowledge can work with it. The community, I felt, was quite well supported. The syntax of actually what you use to run these tests, I felt it was very easy to kind of understand and follow. It can be extended as well, which I didn't mention, but the fact is it can be extended to add your custom controls, custom ways of actually including your test as well. And it's kind of one of the better ones out there, which is like the Node ones out there to allow you to do JavaScript automated testing.